My name is Maro. I'm the Executive Director of the Women's Support Center in Yerevan, Armenia. We are a locally registered non-governmental organization, nonprofit, and we work with women victims of domestic violence, not only in terms of service provision, but also for doing advocacy to raise awareness and to lobby for systemic change in Armenia, which is so important if we want to combat and prevent domestic violence. Domestic violence throughout the world, it's a silent crime. And so it is in Armenia. And especially in our society that is more patriarchal, we have a lot of taboos, we are embarrassed of situation, we don't deal with social issues very well. It was a very hushed problem. In 2006, I believe, Turpanjan Foundation with AUA did the first study when they raised the alarm about this problem that is really rampant. And then it was the OSCE, UNFPA, other huge organizations that did studies, and they came with the conclusion that it's about 60% of controlling behavior, abusive behavior, which 40% is physical violence and 20% can be lethal. It cannot be alleviated completely. However, it can be tremendously diminished. And this is what we're striving for. And in order to do that, we do have to provide services to the women. We have to save women. We have to bring women out of these abusive relationships where they do not spend their life walking on eggshells and be threatened and in fear constantly and abused. But it's also preventing these things because you don't want a society where this exists. Why? Societies that are violent, they perpetuate violence. In families where there is abuse, 80% of the boys become perpetrators themselves. The girls also enter in this type of relationships. So this can become an ongoing process. And the scars, the psychological scars on these children can last a lifetime. And women themselves cannot be productive anymore because of the trauma effects. They cannot focus, they cannot remember. They are also scarred women physically and emotionally. And this is a great expense on the state because the cost of domestic violence on the state is huge, not only about the medical treatment of these victims, but also they are not functioning in society, they're not properly integrated in society, families become more impoverished, women do not work, and it's a vicious circle that brings with it all sorts of societal problems. When we realized that the counseling was not enough, we wanted to open a shelter, and we had a generous donation from a United States anonymous donor, and we were able to open this shelter, which for the past 3 years have worked at full capacity. Now, Women Support Center, besides the support services that it gives to the victim, to the survivors, it also worked diligently on the advocacy for the passage of the law together with the Coalition to Stop Violence Against Women. When the domestic violence law was adopted, and especially when the head of the police of this domestic violence division came on TV and announced that the program is going to start, the implementation of the law will start, it was a wave, an avalanche of women calling the hotline for in our office, going to the police, coming to our center. If we had every other day a woman coming to our center, now we have 3 women per day. And this is huge. I cannot explain to you. Each woman takes about an hour and a half. And don't forget that we have other older clients that we have to work on their cases. So it's something that I'm thinking for the future now, because there's always a peak when services start. An increase in, maybe not an increase in violence, but increase in the women that come out with their problems and feeling that there is more protection for them. Throughout the years, we increased capacity. We started with 1 social worker, 1 psychologist, 1 lawyer. Now we have 2 of each. 2 psychologists, 2 lawyers, and 2 social workers, and a child psychologist. Now with the extra influx of victims, we really need to add another social worker. I want to make people to understand what entails a social worker here in Armenia. In the United States, there are agencies that you can refer to, children's agencies, homeless, this and that and the other. You have Salvation Army that helps a lot, but here there is none of that. All of it we have to do ourselves. We have to go to agencies, we have to go to hospitals, we have to go to get papers from the ministries, we have to write a lot of letters, there is a lot of bureaucracy involved. We have to deal with policemen, with inspectors, and we accompany the victim to all these stages and all these issues. We have to arrange for the kids' schooling, and it's not done automatically, it's not done, it's not institutionalized yet, everything. I think it's very easy to work, relatively easier to work with the victims and have direct interaction, and you pinpoint, you give them information and they decide on what has to be done. We cannot impose anything on them, we cannot force them in them. We're just providing them, give them the tools for them to decide for themselves. So that is a very easy process. The difficult process is how you change mentality, how you change perceptions, how you change attitudes. And that is something that takes a long time, and it requires a holistic approach. It's not only from one organization, it's not only from one institution, it's really everybody, as they say, it takes a village. The new law provided protection measures for the victims, like protective orders, and that works very well. It offers the women a chance to protect themselves and to come out of this relationship. Right now, the law, which is necessary and it's partially good, it does not have a punitive aspect to it. In other words, the domestic violence law has to be preventive, protective, and punitive, the 3 Ps we call. And this is not punitive. It refers to the criminal code that we have, which is not adapted to issues of domestic violence. In other words, there are violations, there are different types of violence, and you cannot, for example, we had a case of 15 years of severe violence, with 5 children, and that woman received the abuser received the $300 fine. And the abuser said, I'll do it again. So in our work at the Women's Support Center, how do we work with the stakeholders and how we tackle the issue in the community? We understood that working with the perpetrator who is 30, 40 years old, set in his ways, probably something learned behavior that he has, it's very hard to change that. So we wanted to start working with the youth for them to understand what is a healthy behavior versus an abusive behavior. A lot of young girls think that if the boyfriend tells them, do not go here, dress like this, do not see these friends, and they display a controlling behavior, they think that it's because of love. So we want to make them aware of the warning signs of a controlling behavior. Secondly, we have to work with the people that come in contact with victims of domestic violence. They be policemen, social workers, educators, hospital workers. And we did the extensive training. This year, so far, we trained 464 people. In various fields. We go in the regions and we work with other organizations and we train these people to be able to understand what is domestic violence, to identify the victim, to be able to speak correctly to the victim and not blaming her, not victimizing her. This is very important. And to establish a trust relationship with the victim. We got a lot of attacks here from the local conservatives, where we're accused of destroying families, of keeping people apart, for breaking out parents and children. We're taking them away from their parents, and all these accusations make me more adamant to protect these women. And I looked at it first in terms of the safety of the women and the protection of the women. The conservatives and the society at large were talking about the traditional Armenian family. I don't know what it is that I did not get a definition of the traditional Armenian family. But when I see so much violence and so much sexual assault towards children in families, I'm saying to myself, what traditional family? What are you talking about? We need to fix this. And I didn't look at it as an embarrassment, but I looked at it as a challenge that I need to do something about it. If I have the know-how that I got from the diaspora and that I got from the United States to be able to bring the international standard best practices to deal with this issue here and to not to solve the problem, but to make an improvement. I will not solve the problem, but I know that I can put the good basis on it. And I see the progress in the short period of time. For example, when the domestic violence law passed, then the government had to produce mechanisms on how to implement the law. And the police and the Ministry of Social Affairs has asked us to come as experts and help them to develop those mechanisms. Wow. You know, we are now on the map. We are at we're at the table with them. And this is how the contribution. But if I would not have done anything, I said that this is an overwhelming problem. This is a worldwide problem. Why am I getting involved? What am I going to do with this issue? It's bigger than I. Then nothing would have happened. But little by little, change happens. 73% of our clients do not return to their abuser, and that's a very high mark. Secondly, we have so many success stories of women who are now not only able to lead a good life when I'm saying a life free of abuse, and provide a good education and safety for their children, but women who really became themselves advocates. And they are speaking out now. And to tell you frankly, in textbooks, they say that when the woman becomes an advocate, in other words, she goes out and talks about domestic violence and talks to the communities and to individuals or gives interviews, it's part of the healing. It's the last stage of the healing process. When they come to us for the first time, to come to the crisis center for the first time, they are depressed, their hair is not washed, there's no makeup, this, that. And then in 2-3 months period, I don't even say hello. I pass by because I cannot recognize them. They blossom somehow. And this gives us the incentive to continue the work. And because we see directly on the woman, we see what's happening to them. We see how they come out. Their children, the aggressiveness in them is diminished. They are more warm and loving with their mother. And this is tremendous satisfaction. I cannot describe to you the gratitude that we have on a one-on-one basis when we work with these women. But also the gratitude when we see that the government people change their perspective and change their attitude and try to improve the situation. So on both levels, we are happy to the impact that we had. We are happy that the feedback that we get. And this is what keeps us going. And I think we can do even better. The fight is not over.
That was great.
We offer the social services to be able to solve their issues administratively. We offer the psychological counseling for them, and if they need for their children, if they have issues, the children have fears, bedwetting, aggressivity, all sorts of problems. And also we give counseling, legal counseling and legal representation. In other words, the lawyer goes to the court for them. And also shelter if that. We provide a risk assessment, which we introduced actually in the country. It's not our invention, but it's one of the best practices. And now the police is using that. It's a 21 questionnaire. And also, if they need medical assistance, some of them, as I mentioned, they're injured. The vast majority have sexually transmitted diseases because their husbands were so careful. That we also have to address. All these issues, it's a whole package of assistance that we offer. And not only that, but we also, many of these women are very impoverished by the situation that they're in. So we offer them clothes, we collect a lot of household items, even knives, spoons, plates, and cups, because when they go to if they rent a room, they will need all that. So we try to offer as much as possible assistance at all levels. This is a very interesting, it was a competition for young people, teenagers, and it's a 12-year-old that won the competition on how to address violence in the families. And he took an old traditional photo, 19th century, and said that până adatce, violence is not tradition. We have now a child psychology room where children have to feel comfortable and happy with special toys for us to be able to understand where the problems are and if there is aggressivity or inhibitions and all sorts of things or fears. And we had the volunteer doing this mural. We thought very hard because the psychologist told us not men, girl, women, boy, girl. So we decided Winnie the Pooh is neutral enough. And it's a very safe and pleasant place for the kids, especially sometimes when they come with their moms. The kids come here, they enjoy playing here, and the moms have their interviews and their counselings. We provided a lot of guidelines. We understood that there is missing in Armenia a guideline on how to set up and run a shelter, guideline for service providers, standard operating procedures for social workers, a guide for mothers who have been abused and how to talk to their children who have witnessed abuse. It's very important. We had booklets for survivors also, how to handle their trauma and recurring effects of the trauma. We have a survey on the attitudes of gender attitudes in people. We worked on a femicide report that we worked together with the coalition, and many other brochures that we do to raise awareness and also for us to use them for ministries in order to incorporate the proper methodology in dealing with domestic violence. Ha, problem çiga vorbim kalbadrasçenk. Okay. Bay zangek asek, ha? Çi kidem și spavazei. Okay, merci. Okay, hai.
Now tell me what this is.
We created a sort of a bulletin board for our visitors because we cannot take them all to shelters, obviously. So we present here some of our activities. These are photos from the shelter, which is a regular home with bedrooms for the women. We do a lot of trainings. The women, diasporan professionals come to us. And also we do trainings to the police or to other communities in Armenia. We go to trainings, international trainings that we are asked to participate in, or conferences. These are rooms in the shelter.
Okay.
And this is how the kids eat at the shelter. And it's a private home that we offer the comfort of a home.
Okay.
And also we train policemen here at the police academy, or they come to our office and we train them to learn new methodology. Okay. We provided a lot of guidelines. We understood that there is missing in Armenia a guideline on how to set up and run a shelter, guideline for service providers, standard operating procedures for social workers, a guide for mothers who have been abused and how to talk to their children who have witnessed abuse. It's very important. We had booklets for survivors also, how to handle their trauma and recurring effects of the trauma. We have a survey on the attitudes of gender attitudes in people. We worked on a femicide report that we worked together with the coalition, and many other brochures that we do to raise awareness and also for us to use them for ministries in order to incorporate the proper methodology in dealing with domestic violence.